Hey guys, welcome to Outlaw Edge. So I have my notes here. I'm doing a quick video, which I'm pretty sure it's gonna be a little bit longer, but I have a lot of questions on YouTube, and one of the main questions that I have asked all the time is, what should I buy for metal shaping? And that's like a simple question. Well, that's the problem. Every time they ask me that, people ask me that question, then when I start talking to them, they're like, and I'm not meaning this in a negative way, because I think it's cool that people are excited about metalworking and metal shaping. But in my opinion, I'm gonna give you guys my opinion. You don't need to buy a bunch of tools. You don't need to buy a bunch of English wheels and planishing hammers and all that stuff. I know guys that build complete cars out of, simple kits with a few hammers and dollies and a beater bag or a shrinking stump. And that's it. That's all they use. That's all they have, Obviously you have, plasma cutters or grinders or whatever that you get into the next step of cutting. Well, that's a whole nother video, cutting the pieces of metal, like using shears and whatever. And I don't want to get off topic, so I'm going to try to keep this short and sweet, but I'll show you some of the stuff that I use. I'll show you some of the stuff that I bought, some of the stuff that was sponsored to us, and some of the equipment or the smaller hand tools that I've made. And so I'm going to go back to that question. What do you buy for metal shaping? If I'm gonna buy a set of stuff to do metal shaping to start right away, it's not gonna be the English wheel, it's not gonna be the planishing hammer. It would be simple stuff like hammers and dollies. And I'll kind of go over there and show you some of the hammers and dollies that I have. It'll take months if I go through all of them. But I'll flip the camera around and then I'll kind of show you guys what I'm getting at with different tools. So if you walk around our shop, it's just covered in metal shaping stuff. And you have shrinker and stretcher. These are both very good investments. They're good quality. These were from Harbor Freight. And one of the things that I hated on those is they had the handle for doing, hand shrinking, hand stretching. That handle, you might as well take it and just cut it off and make a foot handle for it, a foot pedal, because the handle, I see a lot of guys struggling trying to use those shrinkers and stretchers, and it's completely useless in my opinion. And like I said, all these things in this video are in my opinion. What I did is I took and cut these off, and I made a setup here, and I made a rod coming down off that handle. And then you have the shrinker and you have the stretcher, and they're both set up in the same way. Just simple pedals. Me and Spud built these like 3-4 years ago, and it just makes it a lot faster. I had these on a stand, didn't really care for it. Automatically, like the very first day I got these, I cut these handles down and did something different. So, and then you have your typical Harbor Freight English wheel. And what I did is I mounted my bead roller to the English wheel. And it makes it nice because you have like a workstation where you have, you're shaping your metal, and then you need to do the edges or something, or you need to shrink it or stretch it. You have them right here. And then all of a sudden you need to use the tipping wheel or, your dies, and you have those right here, everything all on one wheel, on one English wheel. So it's like a workstation. And if you're in a small shop, this will really help you, because I could still grab this thing and move it all over the shop, and there's no wheels on it at all. It's light enough, but at the same time, it's heavy enough not to tip over, but it's easy enough to move around. I want to thank Sobering Restorations. Sobering Restorations sent me this English wheel. This was sponsored to us, and that was really cool of them. I can't thank you guys enough if you guys are watching the videos. And this is a clutch brand, and if you're going to spend the money, stay away from the Harbor Freight first version. The second version is identical to this, which is just like the clutch brand. This one here is the first version, or the Harbor Freight early version, I guess you'd call it. The later version is completely different. And the reason I say that is this one here has no bearings. This one right here, the clutch brand, which is like the Harbor Freight second version, second generation, you can see that'll just go and go and go and go, and 10 minutes from now, that thing will still be spinning. So this clutch brand is a pretty damn nice setup for a shop. See, that's still going. But anyways, the other thing is, I was talking to Slow Shopping Customs on YouTube this morning. If you haven't seen Slow Shopping Customs, go check his channel out. He does some excellent work. He has some really good videos, and he's in Sweden. And he's got some really cool stuff on his channel. So he was asking about, we were talking about English wheels and stuff, and I said, why don't you just make one? I've had this one for 7 years now. I made this a long time ago. Excuse me. And this is really handy. And if you're gonna get into the English wheels, you gotta kind of know how they work and whatever. So in my opinion, it's better to build the machine and figure out how it works than when you figure out how it bends the metal and stuff, then spend the money and go buy a nice English wheel. And this is actually one of my most favorites right here. And you know, you'll see in a lot of videos, I use this one. And this one here is a pillow block bearing, is what I use for the bottom die. And this is on Acme thread going through here. And this is an old gear off of a tractor. And this raises this up and brings it down. And then this is a trunnion bearing out of a forklift. And I built this setup here so that it holds it from doing this. And this is 2x4 tubing. You wanna make sure you put braces in here. Nice and simple, keep it simple, you know. I handmade all these pieces here, and all that is 1/4" steel that I, you know, cut and whatever, and welded these pieces to. And this is from an Argo half shaft or axle shaft. And then these pieces here I just made. This is 2 pieces of 1/4" with a 1.5 by 1.5 square tubing by 1/4" wall steel. And then you can see here, I cut this out by hand. I didn't use a milling machine or nothing. I did all this stuff in about 2 to 2.5 hours in my shop, my old shop. And this is all stuff that's made. I made this piece on the lathe, the dowel. And the reason I like this is this has the splines in the axle shaft for that Argo. And it goes up and down nice and straight. And you can see, like right now, I'm raising it and then lowering it. And you don't get this slop back and forth. There's nothing, it's perfect. So that makes it really nice. The other thing I did is I made this on the lathe, this dowel. And you can see it runs through here. I took 2 3/8 bolts and I drilled and tapped holes here, welded this piece here, and it holds this piece here into there, and it holds that bearing on. Easy peasy, keep it simple. One of the things that if you are gonna spend the money and get a Harbor Freight planishing hammer, which is what this is right here, they're pretty nice setups, but you can bump up and get a nicer one. They do have the Clutch brand at Northern Tool. There's a couple of companies that offer these. These are no longer at Harbor Freight. They do not sell them anymore at Harbor Freight. And I haven't seen them, so that's kind of a bummer. They only come with 3 dies, 3 shaping dies. And you have like this die here, and then this one's a little bit more aggressive, or this one's a little bit more aggressive, and then this is the highest radius here. One of the things that ticks me off is they don't have a holder for these, which is something I made. I just threw a piece of sheet metal on here, drilled some holes, and screwed this to here so it holds this on so you don't lose your dies. And it sucks because they don't offer, at Harbor Freight, they do not offer a flat die. I took and made that on the lathe, this die right here. Super simple. And it's a flat die, so when you're doing a panel, you can flatten panels out that have a whole bunch of dents, you know, where you're using hammer marks or whatever. One of the other things that I highly recommend would be to get a beater bag. And this is, a lot of people ask me, hey, is that full of lead shot? No, it is not full of lead shot, it is full of sand. I prefer sand. Now the smaller one, which is, where is my smaller one? Oh, it's in the truck. I'm gonna walk over here and grab it. I have a smaller lead shot bag, or lead filled shot bag that is, sorry about the mess here. It's busy in the shop right now. And Tim sent me this, and we use the hell out of this in the shop, and I appreciate it, Tim, thank you. This is a small lead shot bag, and this has like shotgun shell lead shot inside of it. This is more for doing like your quick radiuses and stuff and your smaller work that you want tight radiuses on. This is more for like doing a bigger radius for like a fender or something like that. And don't get me wrong, you still do, you know, other shapes in this, all kinds of different shapes. And the first one I started, excuse me, the first one I started with, I made it. I just took some old leather jacket and cut it up, sewed it, filled it with sand. So you don't have to go and spend the money on stuff. You can make the stuff by hand. Your two hands will make you money. You just got to kind of listen to them, you know? And as far as like hammers, this is an old tank. Like if you go over here to the tank, cylinder, welding tank, whatever you want to call them, that's your cap there. And I just took a piece of 7/8 inch axle. This was an old like axle off of a broken 4-wheel drive or whatever. Cut the axle down, welded that to it, and I used this on this log for shaping. This was an antique ball peen hammer. I cut this thing down, it's one of my favorites. And I use this in here, same thing. You got your tight radius here, and all this was is a piece of log that was out in the woods. And it was actually in a fire. You can see it's all burned up. Every time I drag it around the shop floor, it leaves charcoal everywhere. And it's starting to crack and whatever. And I need to put some bands. I highly recommend doing this. Run some bands around it and put some rivets in it and weld it so that this doesn't split all the way, because you can see I've had this for about 6-7 years and it's starting to finally split. So I need to build another one. But I took this log and I shaped it out with a grinder and dished it. And we used the hell out of this thing right here. And all I did is, you can see the hole here, and you can see where I took my hole cutting saw and cut a big divot out of it, and then did the same thing here, and then took a grinder and a chainsaw and whatever, and shaped these out. All this stuff was free. That right there was free. A lot of people will, you know, give you gifts. Thank you, Tim. Stuff like this. You can make your own beater bag. You can build your own hammers. If you have a welder, a grinder, if you're starting out in fabrication, it's a good way to do it, you know? And as far as dollies, you know, it's very expensive to buy post dollies. You'll get to know that you can find shapes at swap meets and farm auctions and just wherever, flea markets and garage sales. You'll see old body shaping tools and hammers, snatch them up. Because even if you don't use those hammers, you can take those hammers and trade them for something else to get something for what you need. You know, one hand washes the other kind of thing. You could, you know, if somebody else needs one, you can give them one and they'll give you a dolly or something that you need. Do a lot of trading and thinking, you know. Very important tool right here. If you have a good vise, get a good vise. Don't get a piece of crap. Because these dollies, when you're beating on them, when you're hammering them this way or this way, these dollies are wanting to walk around in those jaws of the vise. Or you can make yourself a post dolly stand. That's a whole nother video we'll get into. This is a Wilton. Really strong vise. It's a 450. This came with the shop when we moved in here, and I adapted it to this table, drilled some holes, bolted it on, and I absolutely love this thing. One of the things that I see in a lot of videos that where people have a downfall, in my opinion, is they will put a big vise to do like hammering and dolly work and whatever on a table, and the table's flopping all over the place, falling over, it's denting the table and it's rattling, and that will drive you nuts. Put it on something that is strong. This is 1/2 inch solid plate on top of 1/4 inch solid angle iron. And this table was actually here, and we adapted all this stuff and welded it together and made this table just for doing the dolly work on the vise and doing a beater bag. That's all I use this table for. And then obviously I have my bigger hammers on it, and then my dollies are underneath the table. All those dollies are all handmade. These are pieces of railroad track that I cut down, pieces of pipe, and every one of these, I just welded a piece that, you know, I could put it into that vise like this. And I even have like a flat one if I'm doing some flat work. This was just a piece of pipe that was on a stand. I cut the pipe off, welded this flat piece on there. So, I mean, do a lot of thinking before you go out and start just spending the money. Your anvil, I do use my anvil a lot, and I prefer this hammer when I'm doing real thick stuff, but a lot of times you'll use this for sheet metal work or metal shaping, and I use this hardy hole. There's 2 hardy holes here. I use this a lot for shaping metal, just bending stuff and getting different shapes. And right here on the front of the anvil, you'll get a lot of different shapes from here and here and here. You know, look at metal stuff or metal shapes differently, you know. Even old hammers. I mean, you could take and put a dolly on this old hammer and, or not a dolly, I'm sorry, make that into a dolly by welding a piece like this and bolting it into your vise and using that hammer to shape stuff around. You know, hammers, they shaped the world. They made cars, they built everything. They built ships and trains and whatever. So to me, you know, I got into that lost art of metal shaping years and years and years ago. I got to hang around with Gene Winfield and all these guys in California, and they taught me a lot of cool stuff. And I just went with it and got hooked on it, and it's been like that ever since, you know? So it's fun to take different shapes of metal and whatever and build something with your own two hands. It's fascinating, you know, to me it is. And like here, I buy a lot of old hammers at garage sales and stuff, and this here was like a cobbler's hammer, and it had a great big piece coming off the back here, and I just cut that off. And this was the same thing. This was an old cobbler's hammer, and I made this. I polished it up, I cut the whole back off, and this is a really nice hammer for getting in little tight spaces. And everybody always asks me, why do you have yellow on all of your metal shaping hammers? Every one of them. The only reason I have that, I'll show you right now, is when I'm done at the end of the day and I want to put my stuff away, that's all it is. It just shows me where they go, that these ones go on the rack, the ones with the yellow on them, and then the other hammers go in different drawers and stuff in the toolboxes. Or on the, I have other racks right here where I hang, you know, hammers all over the shop. And stuff like this, you have, if you buy old ball peen hammers and stuff, you have that round shape on this end for metal shaping. And then on this side, you have a piece of, this was like 3/16 inch or 1/4 inch flat strap. And all I did is I welded it to that hammer. Well, that makes a perfect shaping hammer when you're pounding on a piece of metal. It's awesome. That's a really, you know, good hammer that I use in the shop. This right here was built from like an old rivet. And then this was actually cut off of a piece of something that I was working on. And then I just squished a piece of pipe in the press and made my own hammer. I made this one years ago and I use it all the time. I love it. Cheap Harbor Freight hammers. And when I say cheap, they're high quality, they're good, in my opinion. They're cheap in price. So you're not afraid to cut them up. You're not gonna cut up one of your snap-on ones and modify the hammer. I cut the back side of this one off. And it's funny because I actually keep all these pieces that I cut off and I make other hammers with those when I need them, when I'm trying to make a shape. I made this one years ago, and this was actually a hammer that I modified into a different shaped hammer. And I use this one all the time. I really like the shape. I really like this shape right here. And then this is a nice little picking hammer on this side. And this one here, same thing. Old Harbor Freight hammer, and I cut it off right here. And this right here was a welding hammer that got cut up, and I just welded it to here. So it gives you that nice focus, that nice shape on the end there. I made that one years ago also. This was an old Fairmont, I believe it was. Fairmont, or I'm not sure what this one was. But this hammer here, I needed it for a job, and what I did is I put a pick end on it, but it was out to here, and I just cut it all the way down, and you can see that it's just a short pick. And it's very handy when you're doing something that you need to get into tight quarters, but you also need a pick on one side. Don't be afraid to modify your tools. One of the things that drives me nuts, like on the Harbor Freight shaping hammer, this is that poly hammer that they sell at Harbor Freight. It's $8, and I just bought some more the other day. But it had a round handle, and the thing kept turning in my hand like this when I'm trying to hammer. So what I did is I just cut it, put it on the bandsaw or skill saw, whatever the hell I used, and I just cut, so it fits in your hand a little bit better. And you'll get certain hammers that you'll really get used to them, and you'll get to where they're your favorite hammers, and you'll just use them all the time. And you'll get some favorites. So in my opinion, I'm not gonna keep rambling on because I am, and I don't wanna do that. In my opinion, I think if you were to spend the money, buy or build your hammers, And when I say build, I'm talking about modify or make them. And then you have your slapper hammers, which I'll do another video on those pretty soon. I made this one, and there's a bunch of these slapper hammers or slapper dollies that I made. And you know, don't be afraid to modify or build your own equipment. You know, there's a lot of shaping tools in here. Like this is one of my most important shaping tools, and it's literally just a piece of 5/8 inch rod with a slot cut in it, and you stick this on the piece of metal and bend it up. Very, very handy tool right here. And you know, make some of your dollies. Joe Jewett gave me that one. I love this thing. Thank you. That's actually a really handy shape that I use too. So I mean, there's a lot of them. And then Ben from Tool Addict, awesome hammer right here. It's too pretty to use. But look around at garage sales and pick up stuff, and don't be afraid to use other shapes and styles of metal. Aluminum, polyurethane. I use a lot of poly on different things, you know, so you can get used to shaping metal and getting different shapes to, or getting different styles of metal or plastics or whatever to do different shapes for you. So first thing first, if I was to go start metal shaping right away, I would go for a beater bag and a shaping hammer. And the next thing I would be getting is a stump. I would build one so you can get all your shapes that you need, because this shape right here is used a lot. And also your small and large divots that you would cut in the log. And you know, if you're gonna jump onto the big machines or the bigger machines, I would definitely get a planishing hammer and a good quality English wheel, in my opinion. That would be the next thing I would get. So with an English wheel, a planishing hammer, a shrinking stump, a beater bag, some hammers and dollies, you could build almost anything. You know, it really just depends on how much work you want to put into it and how much time you want to do on the project and whatever. Because a lot of times if you want to learn something, it's better to go and mess up a couple times, because when you mess up, you learn. You know, and obviously you don't want to do that on a customer's car or something. You know, you want to try to, you know, go out there and build something different. Just build some weird shapes. That way you can get, you know, if there's a shape that is complex to you, build that shape. If it's something that you're like, you know, man, I don't know if I could figure this out or whatever. Watch videos and ask questions. You know, I'll try to answer some questions as best I can. If you guys have any comments, leave them down below. But I'm gonna get out of here. I don't want this to be a, you know, 4-hour video. But all kinds of different shapes and sizes of metal and whatever that you can use, you know, use and build and whatever. Look around, like I said, look at estate sales, garage sales, look in junkyards. Start looking at big chunks of railroad track and big chunks of metal, and dig around and see what you can find. You guys will be amazed what you can do with your own two hands. And you know, the stuff that you could build out of your mind, you draw it on a piece of paper, and the next thing, you know, you're building it by hand. But anyways, I hope this video helped. I appreciate you guys watching. Thank you so much for all the subs. And I'll see you on the next video. Please go check out our other channel, and that's NZ Mopar Outlaw Customs. Later.